everyone. I'm going to give a little introduction to my favorite politician.
Okay.
Supervisor Peskin was the only candidate that is not sponsored by millionaires, corporate money, or developers. He wanted to expand rent control to 40% of San Francisco's apartment that currently didn't have it. He had a plan to remove 2,000 more homeless people off the streets. He wanted to broaden the Homeward Bound program so homeless people could return to caring family members elsewhere. He wanted to end student homelessness, similar to programs that have addressed veterans and other risks at risk individuals. And he wanted to focus on LGBTQ youth and youth of color disproportionately represented on our streets. And I want to thank you so much for being our speaker tonight, Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me, Glenn, and Happy New Year, everybody. And thank you for doing what you do and participating in CSFN. And thank you, Charles, specifically for inviting me,
You're
and
welcome,
to
sir.
all of you for your advocacy on behalf of our incredible neighborhoods. And also a thanks to many of you who, not as a part of CSFN, of course, but who supported our effort in a race for mayor. We were the last people in the race. And while I am very proud of the $2.3 million that we raised and spent, uh, we were the least in fundraising, but spent our money most efficiently. We received just a hair less than 90,000 votes at an average cost of about $24.50 a vote, as compared to Daniel Lurie, who got 102,000 votes, 3.5% higher, at an average of $150 a vote, with London Breed finishing in between us at about 95,000 votes, first place votes, and spending about almost $100 a vote. So there you have it. We spent our donors' money the way we've always spent the people's money, which was efficiently and conservatively. But that is then, this is now. And what I wanted to chat with you guys about tonight is the situation that we find ourselves in. And this is, I think, not unique to San Francisco. I think it's happening in a lot of places, but San Francisco has been an epicenter for the growth of a movement that has a lot of names. Some of it is called the YIMBY movement. Some of it is called the Together SF and Neighbors for a Better SF, or whatever they're called. A lot of it funded by self-interested, very wealthy individuals and organizations, a handful of billionaires that are known to us. And we'll see, and I have my thoughts about where Lurie fits into all of this, but I think that we have an imperative to organize, to strengthen our individual organizations, to strengthen our umbrella organizations like CSFN and Neighborhoods United San Francisco, because we are up against it. I think we also have a calling to do things very differently than we have done them. We are aging out. We are failing to attract the imagination and membership of a younger generation of folks. And I think we all have to have very serious discussions about what turns people on today. And I think people still care, but I think we have to find new and different ways to reach out to folks, whether it's through arts and culture, whether it's meeting people where they're at around climate change, and a new environmental awareness that is different than the environmental awareness that many of us were raised with. So I think it requires some soul searching on our part. They've also had the luxury, as I said earlier, of having virtually endless funds for organizing, outreach on social media, paid. I mean, you have to remember that Together SF had at its maximum a staff of 27 individuals. That is extraordinary. I could paint this town any color you want if you gave me a staff of 27 people. Um, but what they have taught us is several fold, and I think we need to reflect on that, which is thankfully money does not buy everything. It certainly has influence, and it certainly is an important resource that we too need to figure out to cultivate sources for. But as we saw, these organizations, including the San Francisco Democratic Party, that they really paid for a complete sweep of in March of last year, uh, didn't influence much of anybody. I mean, this is an organization that, together with $9.2 million, endorsed Proposition D that would have wiped out the Historic Preservation Commission, the Public Health Commission, would have taken a strong mayor system of government and turned it into a super strong mayor system of government. And the voters, even though we were outspent not 10 to 1, not 50 to 1, 137 to 1, $9.2 million versus $80,000, voted Prop D down by an overwhelming landslide margin of 43-57. Instead, they adopted a reasonable, measured, transparent public alternative, which was Proposition E, that calls for commission reform in the light of day with a real public process. And in the same breath, this same Democratic Party and these same billionaires opposed Proposition C to create an office of the Inspector General, which many other cities in this country have. And they rejected, like, what, these people are for corruption? But the voters saw through that, and overwhelmingly by 2/3, 1/3 passed Proposition C. So I still have great hope for the San Francisco electorate, despite the money of Michael Moritz, Bill Obendorf, and their Kanishka Changs and Jay Changs and Together SFs and Better Neighborhoods, etc. But I think, and by the way, I think you've all noticed that Together SF is now merging into their sister organization run by the gentleman who was accused of rape,
Jay.
husband Jesse Chang. So they're not going away, but I think their footprint is shrinking. And of course, and no offense to any of you who may have voted for him, but their gambit to elect and really install Mark Farrell turned out to be a total disaster. I talked about the 3.5 point first place vote spread between me and Lurie, 102,000 votes to 89,000 and change. Mr. MAGA Mark was 20,000 votes behind me. The electorate of this city is still smart. It is still thoughtful. People, including many organizations that signed early ballot arguments that are constituent members of CSFN, realize the folly in Proposition D. So, I mean, I think we should all take a bow, but we should not rest on our laurels. I think that, and a lot of this gets lost in the unfortunate labeling of progressives and moderates. I think we need a new language, and I think our language is: are you for neighborhoods or are you against neighborhoods? And I got my start not as a progressive or a moderate. I got my start as the president of my neighborhood organization, the Telegraph Hill Dwellers, in the 1990s. But what I'm worried about is that we are not bringing along, inviting in, educating, listening to, and empowering the next generation of Aaron Peskins, who at the age of 29 or whatever, felt welcomed at the Telegraph Hill Dwellers and was encouraged to be a member of a committee and made those social connections. We've got to really think about how to do that. And I think a lot of it is social. I think a lot of it is I may be the youngest person in this room at the age of 60, but I think that we have to figure out ways to meet people where they're at with arts and culture, with neighborhood walks, with bar crawls, whatever it is. I mean, one of the you know, I'm proud of stealing good ideas. Um, and I will say that I mean, people, I believe, are generally good beings. And people who move to this city want to get involved. And what Together SF has done is very nefariously said, hey, if you care about your neighborhoods, we've got a neighborhood cleanup for you in Noe Valley or the Outer Sunset or the OMI or Lakeview or North Beach or Telegraph Hill. Come join the neighborhood cleanup. Now, it's really an operation to mine your name and then to send you some propaganda about why you should be voting for Mark Farrell and yes on D and no on E. But this is actually something that we need to start doing on the micro level as only we can do it because we really are connected to our shopkeepers. We really are connected to our residents. It's not this AstroTurf digital bullshit. But it's going to take a lot of energy and intention to do that in a way so that we don't age out and ossify. And we're going to have to be more nimble. And we're going to have to, I think, enter into various pacts to have each other's backs, which CSFN has done over time. But I think when, the big thing that is on the horizon and I am quite pessimistic about, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to get our message out to bring new people in, is the upzoning that miraculously did not get shoved down everybody's throat at the end of Breed, but got kicked into the new administration. And we now have supervisors whose constituents are going to have to get to them and hold them accountable, and not necessarily in the loud, toxic astroturf way that it is being done by the Yimbys and the Grow the Richmonds, et cetera, but by real organization, by, good old neighborhood groups in coalition with one another. From District 2, which has a brand new supervisor who self-identifies as an unrepentant YIMBY. And, that is going to be on the Cow Hollow Association, the Pacific Heights Residents Association, but they're going to need help from NUSF. They're going to need help from CSFN. And the experience that I had, which was actually a quite wonderful experience when the mayor tried to ingratiate herself to the high-rise developers along the Northeast waterfront, was that everybody came to the Telegraph Hill Dweller and the District 3 Supervisors Rescue, and it worked. We got an 8-vote supermajority, and we were able to override the mayor's veto. And that is what happens when we work in partnership, when we work in coalition with one another. So I really think that we're going to have to hone that. We're going to have to focus that. We're going to have to get that message out, and we've got a lot of tough sledding ahead in 2025. My guess is that, unfortunately, Mr. Lurie is not going to change this trajectory in any large part. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing that for a number of reasons, not the least of which is his early decision not to bring in a world-class planning director, but to stick with the nice political hack that is not qualified, Mr. Hillis. And I mean him no personal offense. He just didn't go to planning school, and he got that job because he was willing to carry the mayor's water, not because he was a planner of national reputation or esteem. But that's my message for the new year. I intend in my non-working hours and in my volunteer time to help coordinate that, and I also want to reinvigorate the social compact that existed for many years between neighborhood organizations, many of them on the west and north side of the city, with it was kind of a loose knit peace pact, social compact with more progressive East Side organizations, tenants organizations, affordable housing organizations, under a general do no harm theory to the neighborhoods. And I would like to reinvigorate that social compact that has, I think, for various reasons, is not as robust as it has been in the past. And my number one interest, as I've now said for the eighth time, is to figure out new ways to make being involved in neighborhood organizations, in San Francisco politics, fun and interesting for the next generation, whether they were raised in this town or whether they came here for a job or whatever their story is. And so I'm thinking about ways to do that and toying with a organization that will try to breathe life into that.
Thank you, Aaron. I wanted to ask a question regarding San Francisco versus the EPA. How is that going along?
San Francisco versus EPA was briefed in front of the United States Supreme Court, and I cannot recall seeing a decision from the United States Supreme Court unless I missed it.
There wasn't one.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get Lori to have an opinion on that, withdraw it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, don't hold your breath.
Oh, dear. Questions, please. Ah, Gene Barish. You're muted. Gene, you're muted.
Thank you, Aaron. That was a very inspiring presentation. I'm reminded of what Emma Goldman said. I'm not going to go to the revolution unless I can dance.
Yeah.
And it was good then. My grandfather actually danced with her. It was good then, and it's great now. I'm also reminded of when I was a kid at Berkeley in the 60s, there was an organization called Slate that did a lot of political organizing and had a lot of political action. And the best way they organized was by having big parties. They were called Slate parties. It was a big ticket item. Everyone wanted to go. And if you met up at a Slate party, you knew that you were going to, in turn, be asked to do some work. But people were happy to do that because they were playing with each other. So working together was easy after that. And the other comment I want to make, because I don't have any questions. I think what you're doing is great. The no on K campaign, but the Engardio recall could be a really good organizing opportunity for the West Side. It's across ages, it's across ethnic groups and the like, and that could be a start for a bigger organizing effort. So I just want to throw that idea out.
Thank you so much, Gene. The next question we have is from Maria Liza.
Yeah, and just in response to Gene,
yes, please.
Two things. One is because I know many of these organizations that are members of CSFN are, C3s and what have you. So I won't speak to supporting or opposing or recalling candidates, but certainly agree that that is definitely an organizing opportunity that would bring together various constituencies and gives everybody something to do and sends a message of holding supervisors accountable to their districts and to the city. So that there's something there. The other thing I was going to say relative to Slate and what have you is, I mean, what I am challenging myself to do is to raise a significant amount of money, like $1 million, so that we can actually sustain an organization with paid staff. Not a lot. I mean, $1 million don't buy you a lot of staff for too many years, but where we can actually have a presence, we can actually offer that technical assistance. So I'm right now in the big donor world and slowly inching up to half of that goal. But I also think that we need to think about making ongoing commitments. And once I put more meat on the bones, I do think that I will be using my donor list from this campaign to say, hey, I want to turn people into reoccurring donors to have a sustained presence that is rather than the doom and gloom that these guys are spreading, is a love San Francisco and love our neighborhoods and protect our neighborhoods organization. So that's not a pitch for money yet. Sorry, Mary Eliza.
Go ahead, Mari.
Okay, well, Erin, I hope you take a vacation. You really need to take a vacation. So that being said, I definitely agree with everything you're saying. I've been saying for some time that we lost a lot of these ballots because there's no fun factor. We need the fun factor. So I'm all about putting the fun factor back into this, whatever it is we're going to call this movement that we're going to have. And I also, when I look at the situation, I look at, okay, I'll take the Bicycle Coalition because we know their history. They started 30 years ago. It's not just the Bicycle Coalition. It's the Bicycle Coalition, the Yimbies, Walk SF, kids playing, whatever, parks, fun. But we haven't allowed ourselves to open ourselves to more different kinds of organizations and bringing them together in terms of an outcome for an election. There's a difference between just starting organizations and then getting results from the election. So I'm all on board with what you're saying. I just feel that there need to be more different, I don't even care if it's one person starting the group. We need more different groups. We need more different voices, and not worry so much about, you got to agree about everything I say. No, we agree on this issue. We're going to work on this issue together. Then we're going to drink and party and get together for coffee and discuss other stuff later. But that is kind of where I'm going with a lot of it. And I hope I can work with you on what you're doing going forward.
We're going to give tours of the boat club.
Yes.
History tours,
Well,
history walks.
we have music there and very cheap drinks.
Yeah,
And we need that in all the neighborhoods. That's kind of where we need to take it to start with. We need the relief anyway, and who knows what's going to come down the pike. We might all start wearing masks any day now. Okay.
Thank you, Mari. Thank you,
I'll
Mari.
be in
Appreciate
touch
it.
later. Thank you.
Karen Fisher, Fiskin, I'm sorry, Fishkin. Are you
Yeah,
muted?
thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm wondering if there is any cross-planning, cross-pollinating between you and Dean Preston and his thoughts on the need for progressive media.
So I've stayed in touch with Dean, and I am very clear that I want to do less better. And so I am delighted that Dean is interested in that effort. And it's funny because early on, a few of us were sitting around and they were like, and we got to do alternative media. And I'm like, stop, full stop. There's only so much that I want to be able to get my arms around. So I'm going to be with Emma Goldman and dancing. And Dean is working on what he's working on, which is great. I'm all for it.
Thank you for that. And then George Wooding, you have a question? I suspect you're going to be muted.
Am I?
No, you're good.
Good.
Well done.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey, George.
Good to see you again. I think you should fight fire with fire. Not that a party isn't good, not whatever. The Yimbies just kept hammering one nail. You can't buy a home when you need more housing. And I think if you're going to start a group, you should do something which has more like financial seminars for young families on how to buy a house. because I think why the YIMBY movement is fracturing right now is because it was based on a false premise of if we build it, you will come.
Uh-huh.
But if you're making $160,000 a year, you can't buy a house. You can't buy 600 square feet. So all of a sudden, people are realizing that the mantra they've been pushing for the last 10 years is not working for them. They don't have enough money. Two-income families with a nanny don't have enough money. So they can't live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I think if somebody came out with an organization that was based completely on helping young people find a place to live, how to purchase a home with their current income, it would bring young people in droves because that's the entire intent of the YIMBY movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
I don't know if it's the intent of the YIMBY movement, but it's definitely what attracts them for sure.
that's
I think
what
the
they're
intent
trying.
is to carry the developer's water, but the adherence, I agree with you.
Yeah, so they are a failing movement, the way I look at it, because the people that fought so hard cannot buy a home. So now, if someone were to come in and talk to younger people, people with kids, renters, and show them how they could get financing, what's the best way to get a house, buy a home, go through this, because when I talk to younger people, it's amazing how little they know. They just felt like the Yimbys could build enough homes and they would be able to pop into a house. They don't understand the insurance, the mortgage. They don't understand what it takes to buy a house anymore. So it would be very valuable if someone started seminars or something that would help these younger families prepare at least to buy a home in San Francisco. And that's my thought.
I think that's a very good point. The next question I would like to ask Aaron refers to what you're talking about, George, and that is, what is the status with the Park Merced being sold? Now that they have their loan was not
I
carried
don't know.
through.
I don't know.
Well, they're bankrupt.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I have no idea. If I were the bank, I probably wouldn't want the keys back, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay. A lot of places for young people to live there.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I was having
Ted.
lunch with Lori Brook today from the Cal Hollow Association / Neighborhoods United, and she was just talking about the huge number of apartment vacancies on her block in the marina.
Hmm.
So I mean, this is a very complex. What the Yimbys have done very well is if they have created a very simple message that people think makes sense unless you examine it, which is, oh my God, if we just were able to build 100,000 units of housing, everything would be cheaper. And it's like, well, first of all, your supply demand thing don't exactly work the way you think it does. I mean, right now, depending on what expert you talk to, there's somewhere between 40 to 60,000 vacant units in San Francisco. Granted, I can't make anybody rent them, but I mean, there is supply. There's also other factors. I mean, I was the guy who discovered and subsequently outlawed the use of monopolistic, collusive, algorithmic software that large landlords were using to artificially raise the value of rents in San Francisco. So I mean, there's a lot of shit going on. But anyway, we're not going to solve it tonight. But thank you for that suggestion, George. I appreciate it.
And Charles Head.
Yes, thank you again, Aaron. Pleasure to see you again and hear from you. I just wanted to point out that there are coalitions of neighborhood organizations that are older and some newer, coalition, CSFN, Neighborhoods United, Catalyst for Local Control, and others. When Gene spoke about Slate and the idea of having a party, this sort of thing, dancing when you can, we just had a party in December, and we will be planning beginning next month for a fuller, better version of our celebration, which will be in the next holiday season. So keep that in mind.
Yes,
Go
more,
ahead, Charles.
more bigger, better parties. I'm all for it.
Right. And revitalize the neighborhoods, make them fun again.
Yeah.
I really hear you when you spoke about the way you progressed from being a newbie to being a more and more advanced person. I too had a similar progression from being a new member of Sharp to being a delegate from Sharp to CSFN to being a chair of the Government Elections Committee to being recording secretary and then to being president as well.
People
So
ask me how I got into politics, and I told them I joined my neighborhood organization.
yes, exactly. Exactly. That's the way.
Thank you, Charles. Gene, you're on, please.
Thank you. I don't know. I just guess I get a second bite at the apple. Regarding recruiting young people and George's idea, for example, that, you know, what they really want to do is buy a house and so on and so forth. It sort of triggered the data wonk in me, the research person. Is there any research that has been done or could be done to determine what people under a certain age actually matter, what matters to those people here in the city? Does anybody know? Has there been any research that's identifies the issues that matter to them, or are you just kind of assuming certain things based on how they voted?
So we have an accumulation of various polling data points about different issues that we have polled that we can see how they skew relative to age and neighborhood and ethnicity and income and what have you. So, I mean, I think assembling some of that is important. I think doing some focus groups would be very helpful. And by the way, I mean, and I hear George, I mean, I think, you know, my simplistic analysis is, look, here you are in a city that since World War II has been a 2/3 rental stock city. Okay. And what happened is when the dot-com economy blossomed and when their workers did not want to live in the boring suburbs of Sunnyvale and Milpitas and whatever, they all came to San Francisco, and they were shocked by the fact that they were making a relatively sizable amount of money and could not afford to buy or buy what they wanted. And they were shocked by this, and they became easy pickings for the YIMBY movement that sold this vacant promise of we've got the answer. I mean, here they are, they're a decade in, they ain't got nothing to show for it. They've passed all these laws at the state and local level, and it's like, you know, I keep reading the same stupid fucking editorial, including today in the San Francisco Chronicle, about like, you know, we're in the middle of this crisis. Like, well, guys, you know, the city don't build this housing, developers build this housing, and you know, it is what it is, not because of city laws, it's because of interest rates. But all of that notwithstanding, you have to remember that 2/3 of this city is still, as it has been for the better part of a century, a renter city. And we also have to reinvigorate our connections to and protection of that part of the base. And that too has atrophied for a number of reasons, ranging from personal, you know, leadership turnover, the death of Ted Gulletson, who was the head of the tenants union, a rocky set of executive directors thereafter, so there's been a bunch of these things that have happened that we need to very intentionally try to fix. It's also a function of the fact that in the current economy post-COVID, there have been less evictions because the economy is not as superheated as it was pre-COVID. And so there's less of a threat that is hanging over. And so that too has helped cool out a tenants movement. But we need to reinvigorate that, and we need to repair and restore the historic social compact between the 2/3 of the city that were tenants and the third of the city, primarily on the west side, that was homeowners. And so, I mean, there's something there, and I hear you, George. But a lot of these guys, I mean, here's the funny thing. The funny thing about this is the kind of building stock that the YIMBYs are so enamored of is not the building stock that these people want to live in. So weirdly enough, the product that is moving the slowest and has experienced the largest decrease in value is the high-rise condominium product. This is what they want to build, but it's not what their guys who are getting paid $250,000 and $300,000 a year want to buy. They want to buy what you live in, but the YIMBYs want to destroy what you live in. So it's kind of a conundrum. Anyway,
They're waiting for us to die, then they can move in.
yeah, but there's
Yeah, that doesn't work either, though.
the story is that the city is involved in a lengthy valuation process with the California Public Utilities Commission under certain rules that they have to determine the value of the asset. There is vast disagreement between the city that has made a bona fide offer to PG&E to purchase their local distribution system, and it is now the subject of a valuation process that is being conducted before the California Public Utilities Commission that ultimately will, in my expectation, result in PG&E rejecting that final number in whatever amount, and then will lead to years of litigation that hopefully in our lifetimes will be resolved in favor of the city, which is tantamount to an eminent domain proceeding. The ability to issue revenue bonds, so the actual condemnation does not require another vote.